I need to check this. Sa 1 o'clock, sa 2 o'clock Zoom appointment. You. Yeah. Hanya Chora Taluk. Chora Taluk start में. Actually, this is already too late. Hello? Hello?
Chicago's Christmas station. Danielle, what can I do for you? you just have to ask, what do you want in life? Do you want a committed relationship? Do you want something that's more traditional and more solid? Then you gotta let go of this, even though you love him, and even though he loves you. You need to say, okay, I'm gonna love you forever, I get that, you're gonna love me, but I want more out of life, I want X, Y, and Z. I know, but really, I get kind of scared when I do that to him, we have these big talks, but my fear is that if I do say that, then he's gonna say, okay, then I don't wanna get married, I don't wanna do that, I don't wanna do that, and then we're never gonna be together again, you know what I mean? You can't live in fear that if you are honest with somebody, that they will run the other direction or they won't love you. Love is letting go of fear. You're right. So you need to be able to be honest and say, this is what I want and I see in my future. Okay. All right, let me find a song for you.
That's a lot of money.
Okay. Oh, yeah. I don't talk about because I'm in life.
You're not gonna wait?
Wait, what? I've been a bit gnarly for another.
All you have to do is just let him sign. Just read what the information there. Hindi mo na daw it's still the same amount.
Do a party to do back to a regional amount. Okay, buddy. It's a good day for you.
You got money again.
Yeah.
9,000. Mine is very low.
I better be doing mine. 339. Eh? This time we will be taking down notes. We're on 217. Where did we left them? So we should be on 218. So we're talking about infancy. This is chapter 2. Infancy and child.
Social development in infancy and childhood involves learning how to interact with other people. This part of development is closely related to the infant's or child's understanding of emotions, both their own feelings and those of others. One of the first and most important steps in emotional and social development is the formation of an attachment to a parent or caregiver. Emotional development in a person's early years, especially during infancy, is almost completely guided by attachment. So we'll be devoting a couple pages to the ins and outs of how attachments are formed, how they affect development, and what factors can influence or interfere with the formation of healthy, nurturing attachments. Let's dive in. Attachment. Human infants rely on others to care for them, keep them safe, and give them food. Early psychologists believed that infants would form an attachment to anyone who was familiar to them and provided them with food. But a controversial study in the 1960s debunked that theory. Harry and Margaret Harlow, psychologists who study cognitive and emotional development in monkeys and human children, conducted a study in which infant monkeys were removed from their birth mothers. They were then raised in a cage with two artificial mothers. One mother was made of wire and held a bottle of milk. The other mother offered no milk, but it was covered in soft terry cloth. If attachment was indeed based on familiarity and food, the monkeys should have developed an attachment to the wire mother who kept them fed. However, this isn't at all what happened. Instead, the baby monkeys spent most of their day cuddled up with the cloth mother. They'd hop over and drink milk from the wire mother when hungry, but when afraid or seeking comfort, they always went to the cloth mother. Attachment, this experiment showed, is based on a sense of security through physical contact, not just a full belly. Multiple choice question. What does the Harlow's experiment with monkeys show about attachment? Quality of attachment. Mary Ainsworth advanced psychology's understanding of how important secure attachments are and how infants' behaviors may signal the quality of their attachments. She is best known for creating the strange situation, a special test researchers have used to observe infant and mother attachment. The strange situation test involves exposing the baby to various scenarios, then recording their responses. To begin, the child and mother sit in a playroom full of toys while a researcher observes them. After a few moments, the mother briefly leaves and then returns. Then, a research assistant who is unfamiliar to the baby arrives in the room and attempts to play with the baby. The mother leaves again, leaving the infant alone with the research assistant before returning once again. Based on the baby's reactions to their mother's absence and the stranger's presence, Ainsworth designated the children as having either a secure or insecure attachment to their mother or primary caregiver. The children who had secure attachments, approximately 60% of the population, according to Ainsworth, were clearly distressed when their mothers left the room. They reached out to her when she returned, and they were quickly comforted when she picked them up. Those classified with insecure attachments were either avoidant or ambivalent about their mothers. Infants with avoidant attachment did not get upset when their mother left the room. Some preferred the stranger over their mother and actively avoided their mother when she returned to the room. Those with ambivalent attachment were distressed when the mother left, yet uncomforted by her return. Either way, the insecurely attached infant seemed to not trust that their mother would come back, or that they'd find emotional comfort in her presence when she did. Multiple choice question.
The child seeks comfort from the mother. The child seeks comfort from the mother.
Secure attachment promotes an infant's social, emotional, and cognitive development. Children who feel secure will explore their environment because they know there is a home base they can return to, a place where they'll find physical and emotional safety. Even the monkeys in the Harlow's experiments were braver and more willing to explore if they were near their cloth mothers. Furthermore, emotional attachments to caregivers help infants quickly identify who is safe and who might not be. Starting at about 8 months old, infants in Western cultures typically show separation anxiety when separated from their primary caregivers, especially if left alone, and stranger anxiety when approached by someone who is unfamiliar to them. Attachment throughout the lifespan. Key idea forming secure attachments in infancy is foundational to emotional and social development throughout the entire lifespan. Forming secure attachments in infancy is foundational to emotional and social development throughout the entire lifespan. Securely attached children tend to grow up to be more well-adjusted and are less likely to develop substance use disorder and depression. If they become parents, they're more likely to be securely attached to their own children as well. J.D. Jones et al., 2015. Trust is important in friendships and romantic relationships, so it's not surprising that secure attachment in infancy and childhood is associated with more satisfying friendships and marriages. Gariz and Ruggieri, 2012, Haddon et al., 2014. People with avoidant attachment, a kind of insecure attachment, tend to push other people away and are wary of commitment. People with anxious attachment both crave and are fearful of emotional connections. Lee and Chan, 2012. Modern researchers have recently identified another style of attachment, disorganized attachment. It describes children who seemingly do not know how to respond or organize their behaviors around their parent, often due to erratic behaviors or abuse by the parent. Children with a disorganized attachment style fare worse throughout life because of this early trauma. Multiple choice question. How do securely attached children differ from other children when they grow up?
How do securely attached children different from other children when they grow up? They are less likely to develop substance use disorder and depression. So my answer will be on the top.
On this page, we've explored what attachment is. We've also examined different types of attachment: secure, insecure, avoidant, ambivalent, and disorganized, and how they manifest in young children. But what informs what an infant's attachment style will be? How does that attachment style affect their relationship with their caregiver? And how does their attachment style inform relationships they'll have in the future? We'll examine these questions and more on the next pages. Psychological, biological, social, and cultural factors greatly influence how infants form attachments. On this page, we'll consider how a child's behaviors and reactions influence how their parents respond to them. Before we discuss influences on attachment, let's first acknowledge that a parental unit may be more diverse than a biological mother and father. Same sex parents, single parents, step parents, adoptive parents, and extended family members are all capable of taking on the role of primary caregiver. Secure attachment is important and entirely possible no matter who is doing the parenting. Research on children who are adopted before the age of 6 months, as well as those raised by same sex parents, whether adopted or a biological child of one of the parents, shows that these children are just as securely attached as those raised by a biological mother and father. Farr et al., 2017. Gartrell and Boss, 2010. Again, attachment is not about food or biology. It is about establishing a mutual sense of care and security between caregiver and child. Infant behavior influences attachment. Newborns have little control over their environments or even their own behaviors. Despite this, their unconscious and reflexive behaviors do seem to have some influence on their caregivers' feelings of attachment to them. Naturally occurring reflexes and innate temperamental traits can affect how their parents or caregivers respond to them. In other words, attachment works both ways, and infants whose reflexes are delayed due to birth defects or whose temperaments clash with those of their parents may strain the quality of attachment. Let's take a closer look. Reflexes and attachment. Can newborns' involuntary reflexes really influence attachment? Perhaps. Consider the grasping reflex, which causes an infant to grip in a tight fist anything that strokes their palm. From an evolutionary standpoint, this reflex helps other primates grip onto the mother's fur. In humans, however, the grasping reflex is typically interpreted by family members as a sign of affection. Even child psychologists who recognize the action as an involuntary reflex will admit to its emotional power. Yet another reflexive instinct in newborns is a newborn's reliance on faces and voices for comfort. Newborns prefer to look at faces more than other objects, and they can immediately recognize their mother's voice as well. These inborn abilities help parents feel as if their infant is choosing to interact with them, rewarding them for their hard work during the first few months of parenthood. As any parent will tell you, this reward can go a long way in making the hard work of parenting a newborn feel worthwhile.
Mm.
Temperament is a person's innate nature or disposition. We all have distinct ways of responding to stimuli in our environment, or unique and variable temperaments. Our temperament is strongly related to our personality, and our temperaments have biological and physiological origins, determined in part by temperament is a person's innate nature or disposition. We all have distinct ways of responding to stimuli in our environment, or unique and variable temperaments. Our temperament is strongly related to our personality, and our temperaments have biological and physiological origins, determined in part by genetics. The way we react to the world around us depends partially on our natural, inborn temperament. Shortly after birth, parents and caregivers can tell how their baby will react to discomfort and new experiences. While all babies cry, emotionally intense and reactive infants cry more often, cry for longer periods of time, and are generally more difficult to soothe. New parents with sensitive or reactive babies can often find themselves more stressed and more likely to question their abilities as parents or even whether their baby likes them. In this way, the baby's genetics, their temperament, influence their environment or how their parents respond to them and nurture them. Studies show that mothers who are taught how to respond with understanding to their difficult babies' temperaments are more securely attached after 1 year than mothers in a control group who aren't taught this skill. Van Den Boom, 1994. This responsiveness helps both the parent and the child develop a sense of trust and security in their attachment style. Multiple choice question. What is the long-term effect of teaching parents how to sensitively respond to their difficult or highly reactive babies' temperaments? On this page, we focus on how an infant's own behavior influences their attachment to a parent or caregiver. But the quality of the emotional bond is influenced by both the infant and the parent. On the next page, we'll consider how parenting behaviors and culture influence attachment. On the previous page, we saw how an infant's own behavior influences their emotional bond with a parent or caregiver. On this page, we'll consider the important role of parent or caregiver behavior on attachment. We'll also see how culture influences who provides care and what practices they use. Attachment and parenting style. The way parents react to their infant's
Attachment and parenting
matters
style.
greatly to the sense of security that parents and newborns are trying to establish early in the newborn's life. When parents are warm and patient with their infants, they create a secure attachment. When they're not, they risk creating an insecure attachment in their infant. So what happens to the parent-child relationship when infants are no longer infants, but babies and toddlers who express more of their personality and more of their independence? As babies become mobile, parenting duties generally shift from feeding, cleaning, and comforting to teaching and controlling their baby's environments and behaviors. At that point, one of three different parenting styles typically takes shape within the parent. Authoritative style is marked by a high degree of warmth and control. Parents set rules but engage their children with discussions about those rules and expectations. When rules are broken, the children experience reasonable consequences intended to guide their future behavior in a better direction. Authoritarian style is defined by a high degree of control but little warmth. Parents set rules and expect obedience without question. When rules are broken, punishment, rather than a thoughtful, open discussion, follows. Permissive style involves a high degree of warmth but little control. Parents set or enforce few rules, expectations, or boundaries. Children experience little structure or consequences for their behavior. Since attachment contributes both to a sense of security and one's sense of self, the authoritative parenting style is correlated with secure attachment, Carvacillus et al., 2003. This style of parenting is also correlated with better academic, social, and emotional outcomes in childhood and adolescence, especially, statistically speaking, for middle-class white children in the United States and Western Europe. In less secure environments, such as those with high rates of poverty and neighborhood violence, the stricter style of parenting found in the authoritarian style is associated with better outcomes for children. Lansford, 2010. McCloy, 1998. This illustrates that while one parenting style might seem better or more nurturing than another, environment and culture largely dictate which parenting style is necessary to ensure a child's safety, success, and well-being. Culture, attachment, and parenting. The focus on mother-infant attachment in the research by the Harlows, Ainsworth, and their peers represents a culturally specific view of attachment and parenting, rather than a universal description of attachment, Keller, 2018. In other words, Ainsworth and the Harlows were conducting their research in North America, just one place on the globe, with one dominant, Western culture. After all, in many cultures, the family dynamic is much larger than the nuclear family some tend to think of as traditional in North America, where one parent is the primary caregiver to one infant. In many other cultures, extended family or siblings take on caregiving responsibilities. As a result, in these cultures, an infant needs to feel secure around more than one person. It is also important to point out that culture influences parenting practices in ways that help the child learn how to live and survive in that culture. Larger societal culture influences whether a family will value obedience and conformity or independence and self expression. Those values will then influence their parenting behaviors and the importance they place on warmth and control. No matter what culture a baby is born into, however, neglectful and abusive parenting behaviors are unquestionably related to insecure attachment, and that kind of parenting can increase the risk of negative outcomes in childhood and beyond. Multiple choice question. What influences parenting styles? On the last few pages, we've taken
So we got environment, expectation, and outcome and consequences.
On the last few pages, we've taken a deeper look at attachment and the many factors that play a role in how children and their caregivers will connect in infancy and beyond. On the next page, we'll turn to the cognitive developments that unfold as children experience the world and begin to expand their minds.
Diba? Eh, 1 o'clock din ano?